Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Tyler on a Boros Ravager deck versus Kyle on Cephalid Breakfast. That's a list that I've played on the channel a few times, to say the least. The names are actually reversed, though, so Kyle's going to be on the left-hand side. How that got mirrored. But Tyler's on the play with a Pyrite Spellbomb. And that card's actually pretty legit versus Cephalid Breakfast. You're not going to be able to win with Shuko if that is on board and a red mana is available, and can kind of take out whatever combo piece there is. Versus Saga, not really a very good first land drop, though, as that's going to go away. Probably comes out as a Pithing Needle, depending on how well Tyler knows this matchup. Pithing Needle would stop the Nomad Encore. It looks like there may be an Aether Vial on the corner of the battlefield there. It looks like there's a die on that card. So we've got Aether Vial, which could get shut down by this Urza Saga as it departs. Maybe considering that incoming Pithing Needle and not want a Flooded Strand to get hit. The deck does run 4 Flooded Strands. It's not a mix. Oh, and Cabal Therapy. Hitting Lodestone Golem. In the dark, Lodestone Golem's very surprising, given that it's not going to be castable for quite some time, because Urza Saga is going to be going away. Cabal Therapy, one of my favorite cards in Magic, along with Meddling Mage. A real rewarding card for people with a in-depth understanding of the format and the game state. I mean, it's not that hard to name a card that's in your opponent's hand. That's not actually the real challenge. The challenge is getting the most value out of it in terms of wins and losses. And that's not always the same thing as just hitting multiple copies of a card. Sometimes you're just going after the card that will actually win the game for them. Kyle is actually cashing out this Pyrite Spellbomb, despite the fact that it's perhaps his only defense against the combo. Oh, I suppose he's got the Galvanic Blasts, too. Those can be countered. That Pyrite Spellbomb, pretty difficult to get past. And Pithing Needle, see if that's going to go with Aether Vial. Might go with Aether Vial. Could try and break up the breakfast combo. Or some type of hand gesture. Not so much. All right. So we've got Womat Courier. Swings and starts accumulating cards underneath them. See if those cards ever make their way to hand. So far, card has not really done much on the channel. Basic Plains. Ponder. And shipping it back with 2 mana available. Womat Courier. Another card. Shipping in there for 1 at a time. Now these Galvanic Blasts could potentially go upstairs. 4 damage to the face, no small thing. Limdul's Vault not castable here. That's a basic Plains, I think. Yep, that is a basic plains. No, sir. Limb Duel's not going to work. Going to be shuffling the library. I don't know if Ponder was just a shuffle. Hopefully that's the case. Otherwise, that isn't the correct fix. Though some shuffling was already going on. That Ponder, bit of a mess. Kyle, setting aside the 2 mana for Limb Duel's Vault. And considering how to utilize this plains, looks like another Aether Vial. A little surprising. And just main phasing this Limb Duels. I don't really love. Now there's 2 Galvanic Blasts and a Bomat, so he actually does need to main phase it, potentially. Well, I guess you can do it on your opponent's turn. If you do it on your opponent's turn, then you can't counterspell. But 4 damage up top from the Galvanic Blast. There can be another 4 to the face. Yeah, this is just not looking good. Bomat's actually getting more and more attractive to pop. Gets more cards. Potentially going to empty the hand. I expect to see at least a Galvanic Blast. It's going to be impossible to combo off with the Canonist on board. You need to cast multiple non-creature spells, or non-artifact spells in the same turn. Actually, I'm not accurate there. He's got the Aether Vial, so he could, in theory, vial in both parts of his combo and just Dread Return. There is that. Wow, that Galvanic Blast not being used. And is this a Brazen Borrower? Ah, so they were on Aether Vial. All right, so Brazen Borrower bounces the Pithing Needle. Galvanic Blast takes out this Mother of Runes. All right, with Needles unlocked, this could get interesting. Oh no, Brainstorming first. That means Dread Return not going to be possible this turn. There are ways to potentially win from here, but convoluted. Talking about vialing in both Cephalid Illusionist and Thassa's Oracle, having a Shuko to cast. I mean, a long way to go to get there. Is that Brainstorm just done like a Ponder? That was? I think Brainstorm might have just been resolved as a Ponder while drawing a card off of it. I mean, you're allowed to do that. That's just not optimal. As compared to the inverse, you definitely can't ponder as though it were a Brainstorm. You have a Stoneforge Mystic coming in. Grabbing Batterskull. Oh, Pithing Needle perhaps now will name Stoneforge Mystic. Oh, but Nomad's in core. All right, putting Kyle to the test here. Or putting Kyler, I should say. The names are reversed. Everything turns sideways. Bomat gets blocked by the Squire here, Stoneforge, just happy to participate. 1/2 body just flexing on this 1/1 Bomat Courier. But, you know, it does send a ton of cards to hand. Now we've got Mox Opal and Ancient Den. Esper Sentinel comes in. Fairly new card at the recording of this video, so Kyle reads it and actually forces it. Galvanic Blast. Takes out Shaman, I was going to say Shaman and Core. Takes out Stoneforge Mystic. I believe it might have been targeting. Not clear. The Needle's naming. Shuko is showing up, and Ravager is tapped out. So if there's a very interesting, Pithing Needle seems to be naming Stoneforge Mystic. I believe that's what that means, moving the Pithing Needle around. Arcbound Ravager, and I think that's going to do it. I think Ravager might actually do. Brazen Borrower shows up, can swing for 4 in the air. Happy to pick up Shuko. Just need the Cephalid. Almost no way that's correct, unless that Pithing Needle some naming Shuko. That Shuko can get passed around very freely, 0 equip cost, so you can go ahead and equip, attack, bounce it to something else for defense. Stepping in the way here. And everything being sacrificed to the Ravager. And bouncing those counters over to the Aethersworn Canonist. Finally, for the win. Oh, I forgot I had the cards queued up there. So Pithing Needle Canonist really throwing the game into, well, I guess not chaos, I guess order. It's just not doing anything. You're casting 1 spell a turn, can't get too chaotic. It's incredibly predictable at that point. You're brainstorming, that's all you're doing for the turn, aside from artifact spells, and as it turns out, Cephalid Breakfast does not have too many artifacts that it's going to be casting. Limdul's Vault. Usually when you resolve this card, you win. Generally, anything shy of a winning top 5 cards, you're just going to pay a life and keep digging. And then ultimately that Arcbound Ravager, the thing that won the game, shifting all of those +1/+1 counters with the modular ability over to the Canonist. Take that one down. That was a really long game. Goodness, that was probably like a half hour. Very unusual for these two decks. Have a game go that long. All right, skipping over a couple minutes of sideboarding and mulliganing. Not actually sure if anybody mulled. No. Like both players keeping 7. So bunch of sideboarding decisions, and we've got a Tundra or an Aether Vial. Kind of a mana source for the deck. A little bit of acceleration. Esper Sentinel. Gets dazed. Plateau. Passing back. Bone Splitter or Ravager, no body to go along with it. Galvanic Blast taking out the Nomad and Core. Does give the instant speed kill. It is preferable to have the Nomad as compared to Shuko. Picking up to 2. And now we've got the Cephalid and the Shuko, and that'll do. All right, so that is kind of more what you'd expect out of this type of matchup. I mean, that's kind of at the extreme end of it, but that was just a very quick win. Cephalid Illusionist, for anyone unfamiliar, whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability, you mill 3, and this deck has Narcomoebas as well as Dread Return. So Narcomoebas, when they're milled, you put them from the graveyard onto the battlefield, and then you have Dread Return, which allows you to sacrifice 3 creatures, probably the 3 Narcomoebas, to return Thassa's Oracle once you have no cards left in your library. It's a pretty clean kill. A deck that I was playing before the printing of Thassa's Oracle on occasion managed to win a tournament using some pretty wacky combinations of cards that Thassa's Oracle just totally obsoleted. We used things like Angels of Glory's Rise. There was a build using the Mimeoplasm, and basically that required you to have like 3 garbage cards in your deck. Angel of Glory's Rise, for example, would be Angel of Glory Rise, Laboratory Maniac, and Azami, and Lady of Scrolls. So none of those cards were really good. You weren't really happy about them being in your deck in general. Now you just get to run a single Thassa's Oracle, which is totally fine on its own. Really nothing wrong with Thassa's Oracle as a Magic card. It is not embarrassing, and very often it's a body to sacrifice to Cabal Therapy. Just Cabal Therapy someone, cast the Oracle, toss her in the bin for the flashback of Cabal Therapy, and just kind of establish a board state that can actually win. Now we see a Surgical Extraction along with the Swords to Plowshares and a pair of Wear Tears. So just this Bomat Courier for aggression. This is not really the type of hand that Affinity is hoping for. The Surgical is going to be a problem. As is the Swords. Bomat continues accumulating cards. Doesn't feel like much of a threat. I mean, you compare that to like Ragavan. When you're getting hit by Ragavan, you feel the pressure mounting. And I'm kind of surprised that the monkey's not in this build. He does make treasure tokens. That would be welcome fodder for Arcbound Ravager. I suppose he doesn't have tremendous synergy with Aethersworn Canonist. Probably fine. Swords to Plowshares targeting Bomat Courier. Can't imagine that we're going to ditch the hand, especially not with Surgical on board. And I presume an Aether Vial based off of the placement. Did not catch a glimpse of the card. And Nomad. So it was Aether Vial. I don't know if that sequencing was correct. Did Underground Sea just cast Nomad? Did I see that incorrectly? I mean, he had the mana to do it, however. But Nomad has managed to stick. There's the Cephalid. Swords to Plowshares. Clears the Nomad, and now Shuko shows up. And actually really solid sequencing there from Kyle. We've got Narcomoeba, and it looks like there's going to be the opportunity to Surgical the Narcomoeba while it's in the graveyard. Shuko going to be targeting over and over and over again. Narcomoeba does have a trigger, so it goes to the graveyard, and then before you can flash back Cabal Therapy, that trigger would need to resolve in order to get the Narcomoeba onto the battlefield, that's where the surgical extraction gets fired. And from here, the task is fairly clear. You either need to get a Thassa's Oracle in hand, or you're just going to pivot to the Stoneforge build. Cauldron complete where you want to be from here. Probably be prepared to cash out that Cephalid for Cabal Therapy. Potentially milling to hit the other therapy. So align something along, get out the Stoneforge Mystic, get in Cauldron complete, and then mill yourself a little bit to find the other Cabal Therapy and go ahead and, I mean, you're actually fine either way. This is interesting. So with Stoneforge and Cauldron complete, there are the 3 bodies right there. So there's a germ for a Cauldron complete. Once that enters the battlefield, there'll be 3 bodies online. It's time to just mill out again. Unless there's some removal to stop it. Oh, Stoneforge. Yep, eats the swords to plowshares. Fair enough. That surgical extraction, very solid. So yeah, if that swords was known, then you definitely want to be sacrificing the Cephalid to get rid of the swords to plowshares. If it's not known, then it's possible that you're going to continue on your plan to try and dread return Thassa's Oracle. But more often than not, you're just pivoting. When your opponent throws out stuff like surgical extractions or Leyline of the Void that really mess with your main combo, that's generally where you're going to pivot onto the Stoneforge plan. Now, 7 mana for Cauldron complete, not really a viable option. Up to 5, so Batterskull would be an option from here. And a fine one. Oh, Urza's Saga. That is likely to take over the game here. Urza's Saga going to make essentially a pair of 8/8s by the end of this. The first construct will be a 6/6. The next one will be a 7/7. And then when the trigger resolves for the search, you're going to get another artifact at least. Just really need some bodies here. Batterskull probably ends up being the better option than Cauldron complete. Way more than people would think. Like here, being able to cast the body would be totally fine as it stops the aggro plan. And it's also a body. Also potentially equip the Batterskull to the Cephalid, even if there's a handling of the germ, you'll have a backup plan. Cauldron complete, certainly much better in Death and Taxes, where you're able to flicker it with Flicker Wisp, or even the new Yorion builds. Absolutely backbreaking when he shows up. Well worth playing the extra cards. And let's see here. No double black. He's got just the Dread Return in hand. Yeah, just not nearly enough bodies. I think showing that card is practically a concession. But that is another reason why the Cabal therapies are in there, is actually to get Dread Return out of your hand. That is kind of a necessary thing for the deck. You need at least a single Cabal therapy. Probably 2 is the bare minimum to make sure that you definitely win when you mill out, hit all 3 Narcomoebas, plus your original 2 bodies. You can Cabal Therapy yourself twice, and then still have 3 bodies to Dread Return. So if you did happen to have both Thassa's Oracle and Dread Return in your hand, you could at least get rid of those, put them in the bin, and still win. And 2 Cabal Therapies. Kind of the minimum number to make it work, because the card's not amazing in the deck, but it does make it difficult to play against, and it gives you some important resiliency and consistency in the face of all the various disruption that you can encounter in Legacy. And that'll do. Again, showing the hand. Cauldron complete, Dread Return, and Force of Will. That is not going to take it down. Oh, and a pair of Galvanic Blasts. Plenty of extra reach, as Boros Ravager has plenty of time to show us what it's about.